Addesso Poker here. For this episode, we're doing a podcast, and I have my buddy Adam Knopow here. We are going over a lot of poker stuff here. We're just going to have like an open chat. We're going to be talking about poker, other random subjects. To kind of give a little bit of backstory for Adam, we've known each other for a very long time, basically since middle school. And he actually has his own YouTube channel. So we'll go ahead and have him go ahead and talk here and introduce himself.
Yeah, so like you said, I'm Adam. We go way back. I have my own YouTube channel, which I can talk about at the end probably, but it's the short of it is that I'm a short dude, I'm like 5'3", and I like to help other guys who see themselves as short build their confidence up, and because it's a hard resource to find online or really anywhere. So I'm trying to be that resource. But today we're going to talk about poker.
Awesome, yeah. So one reason why I felt like Adam was more than qualified is just the overall time that you've played poker. So
Yeah.
I want to kind of go into your poker, I guess, career that you've had and what got you started, all that kind of thing.
Sure. Well, how I got started actually is kind of a funny story. My dad used to play professionally. He I had a crazy life, but he ended up playing poker when he moved to Vegas. I was born in Vegas. And
So he was like one of the old school gamblers back in the day.
yeah. He taught me how to play. He would spend like half the week like at casinos. Like literally, he would sit in this. It's kind of impressive. He would sit in the same seat for 3 days. Yeah, because I'd be with my mom half the week, my dad half the week. So the half the week that I wasn't with him, he would sit in the same seat.
Yeah.
And that was his way of getting around like the max buy-in.
Okay.
Because he would sit down, build up a bunch of money, and then just bully people. And
Okay.
so he taught me how to play poker when I was super young. And I always enjoyed it. And then I really started only getting into it once I was 21.
Okay.
So once I was 21, I was in Boston. I would come back home to Vegas to visit, and I'll just play here and there. I didn't really start taking it seriously until I started playing for a living, which. Not that I didn't play for a living by choice. I played for a living out of necessity. I can get into that if you want me to.
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think it was my sophomore year of college. I just graduated. It's my sophomore year of college. I was in Boston, and they had just opened up the Encore at the Boston Harbor.
It's a nice place, right?
It's super nice.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. It looks just like the one in Vegas.
Yeah.
Except it's in Boston.
It's owned by Wynn, right?
It's a Wynn casino.
Yeah.
It literally sticks out like a sore thumb because like we'd be driving by it and like it's sort of on the other side of the water by itself, a piece of Vegas in Boston.
That's crazy.
But long story short, I was really tight on money. I had like maybe 1,000. I paid my own bills, paid my own rent, which was like $1,000 a month or so at the time. And I had 2 part-time jobs with my university. That really wasn't really cutting it because it was like minimum wage, and I couldn't turn to family for any financial assistance because that just wasn't my situation.
Yeah.
So I was like, I need to make money. I need to make it fast. I can barely afford to like pay my rent and as well as get groceries and go out and enjoy life and all that stuff. So I turned to poker. I was like, oh, my dad used to do it, so I can do it too. So and at that time I'd also started to watch like Brad Owen and Andrew Neeme and guys like that.
Great guys.
Yeah, and I knew of GTO. Like I knew it was a thing. I would read some articles, but I really learned how to play like strategically from watching those guys, like watching vlogs and like other YouTubers who put out free content.
Sure.
Because I obviously wasn't in a position to pay for stuff.
I mean, the world's in a great spot right now where like you can go and learn anything off poker. You can find any channel. So you had a lot of knowledge available to you.
Yeah. So, like super good. And and so I learned how to play, picked up some strategy, and then went to go play. Mostly 1-3 at the Boston Encore.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing about that casino is that it is the only card room in Boston. That's like legal. It's not even, it's
barely legal.
Yeah, it's like right on the other side of the Boston city border. So it's not even in Boston.
Okay. Is it like an Indian reservation or?
No, it's in a town called Everett, which is like literally it's a bridge across the water from Boston.
And gambling's legal there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Boston's all these weird laws,
jurisdictions,
antiquated laws. Yeah. Anyways, the thing about it being the only one is that it had all kinds of player types come in from skilled like regulars to like recreational players.
Okay.
It is kind of like the beacon for anyone who wanted to gamble in Boston.
Right. It's not like you have everywhere in Vegas where
right.
you can go play for any stakes, right?
Yeah. So I ended up playing there the first month or two, yeah, of the semester. So it was from September to December is when I did this, like playing for a living kind of thing. I went on a good upswing. I made enough money to like pay my rent and get groceries and go out and enjoy things.
Sure.
I was playing I think like 5 hours a day, like 3 or 4 days a week.
Okay. So like a part-time job hours type thing.
Yeah. On top of school, which was full time.
Sure.
And on top of the other 2 jobs that I had.
Oh my
so,
god.
I was very just like I gotta survive.
Yeah, you were all over the place.
Yeah, but come it was like October I think. I had a really bad downswing.
Okay.
Like, I made some bad plays, some bad calls. I look back and like I know like some mistakes I made, but everything's.
But it doesn't help you now.
It doesn't help me now. So it actually ended up being probably one of the lowest points of my life financially.
Okay.
Because it was in October that I had to put or November, it was I had to put my rent on my credit card.
So you essentially went broke.
I essentially went broke, which means I'm gonna be a pro obviously one day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got a bad downswing. And it was I felt embarrassed. I felt like dejected. Like all these. Like I felt like what the fuck am I doing? I'm a college kid, and I just want to pay my rent, and now I'm playing poker, and I'm like putting rent on my credit card.
Right.
It was honestly like pretty bad.
Almost like a rock bottom type thing. Like,
yeah, sort of. And like my friends, imagine like your friends want to go out to like get drinks, and I'm like, yeah, I'll go with you, but like I'll order like a water or something.
Yeah.
And like water, like having pour some of it out so it looks like I'm like drinking some other drink. It's like it wasn't the best. But I ended up putting my credit card. Ended up still playing, and then in December I went home, and in January I started like a full-time co-op internship somewhere.
Okay.
Where I was getting paid. So I was able to eventually pay off my credit card in like February of next year, which was good. And after that I was like, fuck, I'm done with poker. Obviously that was a lie because now I'm here. Because
now you're in Vegas.
Yeah, like, I enjoyed the game. But like one thing I learned is I would never ever personally want to play poker for a living. I don't know how my dad did it.
It's a stressful life, man. Those grinders, they.
Yeah, I mean, more power to you if you do it. But the thing for me was that I couldn't find enough meaning in it because it's a fun game, but like when you're just sitting at the table and you're pushing chips back and forth.
Sure.
You're not like I didn't feel like I was adding enough value to first be my full-time thing.
Right.
I'm happy I did it. I'm happy I went through it.
Yeah. Sounds like quite the experience.
It's definitely an experience, and that's my thing. Is as long as I don't die or like get permanently injured, I'm usually happy I went through whatever I went through.
Sure.
So that was my time as a pro, if you want to call it that. And yeah, I wouldn't want to do it again, but it was a good experience.
Yeah. Would you say that your main, like when you're saying like pushing the chips around and not super value and it was like very up and down, would you say that might have been with the stakes that you were playing specifically? Like, because I know like 1-2 and 1-3 for anybody out there that knows, like it's a lot more gambly because of the level of play. Like you're not going to get any crushers necessarily on that level of stakes. Not to say, like, for example, you're a great player, but, like, you're kind of a dime a dozen for the people that'll sit down at those tables. So you're going to get a lot more, like, it's mainly rec players at that level. Yeah. Like, there aren't too many people that make a living playing 1-2 and 1-3. Now, like, there are spots, like, for example, locally in Las Vegas, I know there's a number of pros that make a living playing 1-3 at the Win because they have a $1,500 max buy-in for a 1-3 game. So they're like, it's really not even a 1-3 game.
Yeah.
So that's playing like Texas big game, like 1-3, like where it's really like a 2-5 or even a 5-10 game. So do you think that had something to do with it, like the stake level?
Definitely. Like I said, I mostly played 1-3, but I dipped my toe into 2-5 a couple times when I was like I was like, oh, I'm running hot, like I can do this. Yeah. And the skill, the jump was like insane. Yeah. I was not there. Like when I first started my stint as like trying to play poker to pay my rent, I was so bad. I would bet 50 with nothing. I would like get to the river. I have nothing. I'm like, I can bluff her out of this.
Yeah.
I remember one hand, I bet like $15 into a pot of like, it was like 170. And I was like, yeah, this will be a good, like, I'll bluff and she'll fold. So I bet 15. And then I remember she looked at me, she's like, okay, she called, and I showed nothing. She was like, why'd you do that? And in my head, I was like,
I tried to
I was trying to bluff. But on the outside, I was like,
I get it, yeah.
I was like, I thought I would win. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But obviously, that's a terrible move. Don't do that.
Right.
If you're trying to bluff someone, don't bet like a 10th pot or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, I forget what the original question was.
But like the stake level, like, do you
yes.
think? Yeah.
It was a combination of it being 1-3.
Yeah.
And also, like I said earlier, everyone that wanted to play poker comes here.
Yeah.
From good to bad.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you would get good players, and sometimes you would get like bingo players.
It's not like here, like where you have every hotel or every casino on the strip has a poker room just about. Like not every, but most of them, to where you can basically pick and choose where you want to go play. Like if you go there and you're like, man, this competition sucks, or this competition's like way too gambly, then you can walk across the street and go to a different place where it's a lot more structured.
Yeah, if you wanted to do that, you would just get a table change. Like that's
right.
Literally what it was like. There were some guys who would have a solid range that would play near GTO, I guess. And then there'd be other guys who like turn over 7-5 for like a river straight and be like, yeah!
And then you're like, you should never have gotten this straight. Yeah,
I had 7-5 offsuit, and he was calling all the way down, and like he hit it, and like that's gambling. And so like you'll get a good mix when you go there. So that shit was aggravating, but you know, as I played, I got a little bit better, and I started I
figured it out,
read stuff and watched more videos, and I was like, okay, this is like betting 15 into 170 isn't good. Like like that kind of stuff.
We all go through that. I mean, I used to think, but my biggest thing as far as the bets go is I used to think like you had to bet big, like for value. Yeah. Like I never, like when I thought you always had to bet 60 to 75% bluffing or 60 to 75% value. Like you had to keep it that way. Like I never knew that you can bet a third pot for value. Like you don't know that kind of stuff until you actually get out there and start doing it. You know?
Yeah.
So there's a big learning curve. I mean, once you start playing, I mean, you can watch all these videos, but until you actually get out there and start seeing what works, it's it's trial and error.
It's kind of funny because we learned this kind of stuff by watching videos and the internet.
Sure.
Like I wonder what it was like 20 years ago with when that stuff wasn't available and everyone played like how we used to when we were rookies.
Oh goodness.
And if we could go back with the knowledge of, oh my god, that'd be insane.
Well, for one, I think that most poker players, I mean, you can look at Negreanu's videos where he talks, like he tells stories about how before he made it, he went broke like 4 or 5 times.
Oh yeah, come down from Canada.
Yeah. So he went broke, and he's number 3 on the all-time money list today. So it's like, but he came from an era where you could basically read a book and that's about it. Like, and that was the extent to what you could learn other than physically playing. But nowadays, like you can play online. Like you can play online for cheap stakes to learn. You can do a lot of there's so much like solvers. There's a lot of AI stuff where you can learn. You can watch videos. Like back then, like Negreanu couldn't go on the internet and watch YouTube and learn how to play poker. And like you just couldn't do it. He had to go and learn how to play, and that's how all these guys like Doyle Brunson, I was just about to say. Like even when Doyle Brunson started playing, there wasn't poker books. Like he just learned.
You had a gun on your waist, and now it's like you better pay up or get out of town.
Yeah, and the thing about so for example, we can all pull up on a poker odds calculator and figure out aces versus kings are like a 95% favorite, right? We can all pull that up, or a 90% favorite, right? Yeah. We can all pull that up now. But how they used to find out is, I've heard Doyle talk about this, that they would literally put the cards next to each other, they would shuffle it and deal it to figure out what the actual odds are. So they would figure out, okay, well, what's aces versus kings? They would put them aside, put out the combos of aces and kings, and then they deal it fucking 20 times, and then now that's what the odds are.
Those are the odds.
But now I have a book where I can literally look up certain combos against other combos pre-flop, and I mean you can do it outside of the book. That's kind of old school, I guess, but you can literally find that information out. Whereas back in the day, I don't know if you know who Stu Unger is too.
I've heard the name.
Yeah, he's popular from the 80s and stuff. I don't want to misspeak, but I think he won 3 main events in a row. Like, I think he's the only person to ever do that.
Okay.
Like, I think he has like 4 or 5 bracelets throughout his life. He actually, unfortunately, like, he OD'd. Like, yeah. But anyways, he was one of the great, like, old school players. And like, he had no way to study. Like, none of these guys, none of these old school guys did. Like, any of them. You know, or you look like Bobby Baldwin, like the guy that had Bobby's room in the Bellagio.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
He didn't study. Like, they just learned, you know? They just learned as they went. And granted, like, doing that, like what you did, is a little bit tough because you're on a limited bankroll.
My bankroll was my rent. It was like literally like 1K or under for 300 max buy-in.
And that's a tough situation to be in because it's like sink or swim, basically. Like, you either learn very quick or, you know. And like, I'll tell you my experience when I first started playing is, I don't know how this was because you mentioned that you had a huge upswing, but what I found is I thought after studying, reading a book and all that kind of thing, that I was like hot shit basically. And so then what ended up happening is I went playing online poker. I went on an insane upswing. Like, I won a lot of money online. Yeah. Consistently, like a ton. And I was making these super high variance plays that were just mega working out for me. Like, it was insane, right? Yeah. But then what happened was, and this is how I discovered GTO, is I was purely an exploitative player. And what happened was my variance ran out for me, and I went on a huge downswing, and I was doing the same type of plays, but I was losing. And what I figured out is these plays aren't good. It was just working out for me. Like, truthfully, like, I was doing stuff like, somebody would 3-bet me and I'd have pocket 9s and I would 4-bet shove, and they'd flip up jacks and I would hit a set, and then I would double up my money. So I'd make plays like that, and like when it happens, you're like all excited because you just basically sucked out on somebody, but it tricks your mind into thinking that you're much better than you really are. And that's the biggest thing with poker, is that it's a big ego contest, because a lot of times you think I'm way better than I really am. And then when plays start working out for you, then you're like...
It's a confirmation bias.
Yeah, so then you're like, oh, well, I'm the shit. And then then it kind of sets in once, because it's going to run out. The variance is going to run out. It always does. Because like, if something's supposed to happen 10% of the time, it's going to happen 10% of the time overall, but it may happen 100% of the time, for 5-6 times in a row, to where you make a shitload of money. Right. But in the end, it's going to level out, and you're going to be on a way big downside. Or downswing, excuse me. So
yeah, and that's like the age-old principle of like, don't be results oriented, whether it's good or bad. Right. Like, you can't be like super happy, or you have to like. Yeah. And when you evaluate your decisions, not your outcomes. Right. Right. So.
Right, and that's like the thing. So for me, my biggest learning experience when getting started, just overall in poker, is number one, I had to go through the phase where, okay, I'm not as good as I really thought I was. So you have to be honest with yourself, and then from there, you have to be the type of person that's willing to actually put in the work to get better. And then now, like, there's times where obviously we get lucky, like we get there on the river, like we're not necessarily supposed to get there, maybe we're not getting the pot odds that we should, but we call anyways and we get there. Like, you have to have enough in you and enough experience to understand the fact, like, I got lucky that time, but that isn't a profitable play. And that's kind of where I went, is I'm like, okay, you know what? Everything I do now in my poker career is like to be plus EV, like plus expected value decisions. If you make plus expected value decisions, then it's gonna work out, and you're gonna show a profit in the long run. Right. If you make negative EV decisions, you're gonna get there and you're gonna make money at some point, but in the end, you're going to be negative.
Okay, so question for you. Yeah. If there's like a situation you're in where you kind of have, like, you've been playing with a guy, maybe you've played like multiple sessions with him or something, and he puts you to a test, right? Okay. Normally your decision would be minus EV, but you know this guy, and you just feel like the wrong minus EV decision is actually the right one in this scenario. Yeah. Would you still go with the plus EV, or would you go with your gut, I guess?
That's a tough decision. It's very situational, I would say, because that's a tough decision, because in the end, like, you don't really want to deviate from the plus EV very often. It's a very fine line. And now the answer to this, because you can't just say like, and nobody can do this, you can't just say plus EV all the way, because what ends up happening is now you're too exploitable. Because if you're not willing to deviate, then people can put you into negative EV situations really easy. I mean, and how you do that, like for example, like if you have, and how you get into plus EV situations is based off of like pot odds and stuff like that.
Okay.
So basically like...
real quick, for the record, I don't know much about actual like GTO. Like he does a lot more studying than me. I just kind of play live poker and I watch videos and read some articles and like have an idea of what I'm supposed to be doing, but like I couldn't tell you like, oh yeah, that's like a plus EV, that's minus EV. I don't know. So
basically, like to kind of explain.
Yeah.
So like when you're looking, it's basically about your equity and your pot odds, like to be plus EV. So like, let's say for example, we'll put an example out there, right? I'm trying to think of a good example. Let's say you have ace king, right? Mm-hmm. And the flop comes and it's like deuce 3 10, right? Let's say for sake of argument, you put your opponent like on a range and you think that they have like tens, maybe jacks, right? Let's say like top pair, maybe jacks, maybe queens, but you have ace king, right? In that scenario, let's say you check and they lead out. Let's say there's $10 in the pot, and let's say that they throw 15 out there. Okay, so there's 15. So they throw 5 out there. Excuse me. So they bet half pot. So now there's 15 in the pot because their money's dead, right? Right. Well, so now what you have to look at is, okay, so if I make this call, that's $5. That makes the pot $20, right? Mm-hmm. If you divide $25 into 5.
$25 into 5?
Yeah. Okay. Wait, 20 into 5.
25. Okay.
What percentage does that give you? That gives you 25%.
Right.
So theoretically, you need 25% equity on the flop to make the call. So if you think about it from just your outs, right? Mm-hmm. So with ace king, like you have to think that most of your outs are going to be good, right? I mean,
like 6 outs, right?
Yeah. So you have 6 outs, okay, and there's a rule. It's basically 6 times 4 on the flop. Yeah. So if you do 6 times 4, and that's 20.
On the river, right?
Right. Yes, exactly. Yeah. You divide it in half, right? So 6 times 4, what is that? 24. Yeah. So you basically, onto a half pot size bet, you basically have the right amount of equity to make a plus EV or a even EV.
24 is less than 25 though.
Right.
So is that minus EV?
Like if you want to be real technical,
but it's close.
To me, like I count that as like an even situation. Okay. Like you're basically getting even odds.
Plus, I think that times 4 and times 2 rule is like always off by a couple percent anyways. So.
Yeah, there's an additional formula. So if you're over 8 outs, there's an additional formula. So, but if you're less than 8 outs, like on a situation where you have 2 overcards, then it's basically spot on accurate. Now, where it might be off by like a percent or 2, like if you factor in like backdoor draws, but you can't really if you look on a poker odds calculator, in my opinion, I don't like the odds that they actually produce on flops, and the reason being is because, in my opinion, you can't really count backdoor equity. And the reason why is because like a lot has to happen for you to hit like runner.
Like when we get there kind of thing.
Right, but that's why for example, like you're not counting your outs to the river, like you're counting your outs on the flop to the turn. Yeah. And then when you're on the turn, if you don't hit your outs, then that's why you don't go by times 2, because now you're counting your outs to the river.
Right, and like who knows if you'll even get there if you have to be put in a tough spot on the turn.
Right, and even then, like, so then you have that backdoor equity, and let's say you hit a card that improves you, well, your equity is even worse going into the river. So it's like, to me, you should only count like your clean, like right now outs that are gonna make your hand for the next card.
I agree. Yeah.
So like to me, like
your strategies, I guess, but yeah.
Right, like, and like of course you gotta factor in, okay, like. Are there going to be cards that are going to be better for my range than his? Yeah. And is this going to be where I can bluff at a later street? So like maybe you have ace king, but maybe you were in the big blind or something and there's 3-5 on the board. So like this smashes your range a lot more. So maybe you still play ace king. but the 3-5 on the board smashes your range better. So maybe a 6 coming on the river or on the turn is a better card for you that you might be able to bluff at later streets.
Right, because it's in your range.
Because it's in your range.
Got it.
Right.
That makes sense.
So that's kind of like, so when you get to the plus EV thing, so like specifically like in those scenarios where you're like, you know, you need technically 25%, but the equity's like 23 or 24%.
Is it when it's close?
And even like 20%, like that's kind of within the range where like technically yes, it's negative EV, but you're like well within reason. Where you don't want to get into situations is like where your opponent bets, you know, one size of the pot, and then now you're calling with like way negative EV.
Right.
Or like, you know,
dramatic.
Right, where it's dramatic, or like you get like, let's say you get on the river and like obviously the hand's decided when you get to the river, right? So the equity's done. But when you're trying to decide like how much of the time your hand is going to be good, and they decide to bet 1.5x pot, like if you have, you know, bottom pair or something, now like you're just deciding, okay, like now you kind of the river's a little bit different because now you're factoring in combinations and stuff where it's like, okay, what bluffs does he have and what value does he have?
Yeah, and then there's also to factor in like the player type, like you know, is this something that you can exploit? Do they often do this? Like, you know, so then it goes. That's outside of GTO, cause that's, but that's like, you know.
And that's the thing is like with GTO, I think like if you're following GTO to a T, like I think you're gonna fare well. However, there are going to be times when you have to use exploits because we're not playing robots here. We're playing people. Like so,
especially at low stakes. At low stakes, like GTO definitely like works, right? Because it's GTO. But like, there's some decisions that you're gonna be like, oh yeah, they definitely have like aces here, ace king, and they have like 2-3 or something.
So specifically, and this is just my thoughts. Yeah. I think that GTO on low stakes tournaments is a must.
Yes, on tournaments, yes. I'm talking cash.
Tournaments, 100%. Low stake cash, and this is coming from GTO. I use GTO more so for pre-flop. But post-flop, to be perfectly honest,
it's fucking random.
Like I use like mostly exploitative play on small stakes cash.
You kind of have to, because like, and once you really understand, especially because I play at the same place most of the time. Yeah. Like you understand kind of the vibe in the whole room. Like people at the South Point where I like to play very different than if you go to like the Aria or Bellagio or whatever. Yeah. Because like
it's a different.
Yeah, it's a lot of regs, a lot of old people, and so like. There's like a player type individually, and then there's a player type per venue. And like at my preferred venue, like it's just I know how to play there and be profitable now. But if I did that at somewhere like on the strip, it might not work out as well.
Right, because your level of play, and that's like where like setting up your like actual table image and game plan. Like I don't know about you, but like when I get on a table, I mean, unless I'm dealt like really good shit, like I don't play for a while. I wait like a good orbit or two to kind of get an idea of what the fuck's going on the table.
I always tell myself like I'm gonna sit down, like fold out, and then like kind of get an idea.
Yeah, but then you get aces and you're like, well, fuck me, I have to play.
Yeah, but at the same time, like because like I said, I play at the same place most of the time. I don't have to do that because I already know what to expect at that table. If I were to go to like the Venetian, where I don't think I've ever actually played there. I would have to do that because like maybe they're all super aggro or something. Yeah. Whereas at the South Point, everyone just limps in all the time, and it's like those actually kind of nice because I can just steal those. Yeah. But gotcha. So talking about that, by the way, I wanted to ask you, what do you think of when it comes to table image? When you sit down, what do you think about like putting music in or watching a video versus like being at the table, paying attention, being present? Because I do both.
Okay, so we can kind of talk about that because to me personally, I think that falls into, and you could totally disagree.
Yeah.
I find that falls into a table etiquette issue. Like, I don't like people. Okay, here's the thing. If you want to listen to music, honestly, like, I really don't give a shit because it doesn't make a difference to me. But when it bothers me is when you're so consumed with your music that you're not paying attention to action. Yeah. So like, where it comes in is like you can obviously pay attention to like, oh, I got my cards because you're visually looking, right? But where it comes into play is like listening to people. So like if somebody says, like some people on a table, like they don't do this for check. Like they verbally say check.
Yeah, which I'll do sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
So like, but you're not gonna hear that. Or like if the dealer is trying to say something to you. At the tournament that we played, there was this guy sitting next to me that was listening to music, and he was not paying attention because he was listening to music, and he was like changing songs on his phone and shit, and some guy raised, and he goes and limps in because he thought that the guy just called,
right.
And then the dealer is trying to get his attention, and so the dealer is like smacking the table, like trying to get his attention, and that's like, and so big deal, maybe not, but it's irritating for everybody at the table.
Yeah, if you're holding up the game and like causing issues, like
right.
it's bad table etiquette, but you're also like stealing time, especially in a tournament.
In a tournament,
from
it's
everybody.
In a cash game, time isn't as precious. Granted, we're all there. Like our time.
Because as a person, like it's
rude.
Etiquette. It's respect. So if it's not holding up the game, I don't mind. If I listen to music or something, I usually just have one in so I can hear.
Exactly. Exactly.
But I've noticed with myself personally, because I primarily play cash. I don't really play tournaments too much. If I'm listening to music, I do worse.
Yeah.
Generally, because
you're not as involved.
I guess I feel like I'm just doing the same, but like when I'm listening to music, I'm not hearing other people. I'm not like paying attention to other people as much.
Yeah.
And my thought processes are kind of clogged by like literally music in my ear.
Sure.
So I
distracted.
Yeah. When I stop listening to it, even though I kind of like to have some kind of background noise, I feel like I just do better when I don't listen to music. Or sometimes I'll even watch like videos and shit.
It affects your mental game too. Like
if
you really think about it, like if you have a song that's like a little more intense, like you may not think about it, but it might make you make a play like more aggressively, or like we've talked about this like in private, but like tells, like you're listening to a song and like it's maybe more intense, so then you decide to fucking throw your chips more.
I've done that before.
You're listening to like Adele like singing her heart out, and then now you're just like you know like do you know?
I have a poker playlist actually.
Do you really?
Yeah. Well, it's actually it kind of, you know how like they say when you're like a student, you chew gum when you're studying, and you chew gum when you're taking a test, and it's supposed to like have a mnemonic remind you.
Yeah. Like
that's kind of how that playlist is for me. Like, I'll put on that playlist, and then it puts me right in the zone of being at the table.
Sure.
Again. So for what it's worth, that's kind of it's a fun thing. I don't know if it actually makes me better or not, but
yeah. So like for me personally, like I choose not to listen to music, or like I'm not the person like until I'm not ever on my phone. Like until you showed me an app to use for tracking.
Oh yeah.
And that doesn't distract me because it actually keeps me more engaged with like my stack and everything. So that actually was helpful.
Super helpful.
But and to those of you, like basically Adam showed me an app where you start your timer and it tracks how long you play, where you're playing, what stakes, whether it's cash or tournament. And then basically what you do is you keep track of your stacks. So if you play a pot, you win or lose, then you can go and update your chips. And it has like a whole graph. It shows you everything like that.
Yeah.
If you're playing a tournament, you can change like, okay, blinds went up, so you change the blinds, the antes went up. Or if you're playing cash, like obviously your stakes pretty much stay the same. Or like, for example, if you're playing a straddle, now you can change the blinds there.
Right.
So, or you decide to go from a 1-2 table to a 2-5 table, which you shouldn't do, but anyways, but
the app is called Poker Bankroll Tracker. We're not sponsored. He's not sponsored.
Yeah, we're not sponsored.
But it's just something that I use as a tool. You might find useful.
Yeah, it's free. It's got a lot of. I think it's pretty awesome. I mean, for tracking.
Yeah, especially in tournaments, it tells you how many big blinds you have, which I think is the most helpful.
That is the most helpful because, and here's the thing too, is that like even if you're playing online, like I think it's still helpful because you can see the trend of how you're going, but also when you're playing online, because let's be honest, like WSOP is not the best website, so you can't convert online your chip stack to big blinds like you can some websites. So it's just helpful knowing how many big blinds you are, because when you're playing cash, like you're theoretically, like as long as you're properly bankrolled, like theoretically you're playing an endless amount of big blinds. Now, what you have on the table, yes, but you're theoretically like you can reload, you can add on, you can do all these things. Theoretically, right?
Yeah.
Like that's
it feels different, obviously. The thing that helps me with that mostly, it keeps track of like all my sessions, how plus or minus I am over time. When I'm playing cash, it's like I'll start with like 300 maybe. I'll buy at a 1-2 table, and if I get down to like 180, I'm like, damn, I'm in like the 100s. I feel like I'm down a lot. But then it says like minus 120. Like, oh, it's only 120. So in my head, like that makes me feel better.
Right.
Like, oh, I'm not down to like actually 100. I can make that back in like a couple hands if I do well.
Sure.
So
and then you can track how much time you've been playing.
That's super helpful for me. Yeah.
Yeah. It tracks like it tracks how much you're making per hour. Like it tracks a lot of different stuff. Which is really awesome.
Yeah.
It keeps track of like, you can even put expenses in there, which is kind of cool. So like if you're spending the day, you know, like if you're a reg and you're spending, 6 to 8 hours at the casino and you grab lunch and all that kind of thing, you could literally put that in there. Yeah. So it's a pretty cool tool.
Yeah, great app.
Now, as far as kind of getting back to the poker etiquette thing, like personally, I choose not to be on my phone. Now with that's different because it's more engaging because it's engaging in your actual game. Yeah. But I'm not like scrolling on Instagram. I'm not like, I'm not on YouTube. I'm not listening to anything. For the most part, like. Yeah.
You know what I'm realizing too? In a tournament, it probably makes a lot more sense to not be on your phone because you should be engaged because time is of the essence, and if you're not paying attention, whatever, it causes issues. In cash, because there's not that time restraint, you can kind of be more relaxed and not pay as much attention. Yeah. Especially if your pre-flop strategy's like tight. You kind of just like look at it, fold away, and then go back to whatever you were doing. Sure. So I feel like it's a little bit different. Yeah. A little bit unrelated, but I was high the other day, and I was thinking about like people do randomizers. I know you have your thing, like randomizing your head of like how to do a certain thing. I was thinking, what if I brought a die, like a 6-sided die to a table, and I would very obviously, when I'm trying to randomize, roll the die, see what it lands on, like odd, even, up, like 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, whatever it is, and I'll use that to randomize, except I won't. Like, I'll roll the die so people see that I'm doing it, I'll look at it, and I'll make a decision, but I already have my decision made up before I roll the die. Just to fuck with people. I wonder how that would. What do you think of that?
It would be hilarious.
You'd be like, what's he getting out of this die?
Yeah, no, people would be very dumbfounded. Like they would probably look at you like you're insane.
Like they assign a tell to me that it doesn't exist. I don't know.
Yeah. They'd probably be very confused. I mean, that's for damn sure.
It's kind of fun.
As far as like actuals, like there's a lot of different methods. Like you and I've kind of talked about it, but like my favorite for online actually, if you're playing online because nobody's there, is I'll set up a window separately on my laptop or on my phone. And I'll it's called just a random number generator. Okay. So it'll be like up to 100 or something. Yeah. And so I'll click generate random number. And then let's say, and this is just as an example, I'll have in my mind, if it goes on an even number, then I bet here. If it goes on an odd number, then I check here. Yeah. So in where you use it really in that aspect is like in GTO or really whatever system you're playing in. If in your mind this is a 50-50, like I check here or I bet here. Like sometimes you check, sometimes you bet. Like for example, if you have ace king, if you miss the flop, sometimes you bet, sometimes you check. If you hit the flop, sometimes you bet, sometimes you check. Right? So if you're in a 50-50, then you have to have some way to stay balanced because we're humans. Like we're not going to sit there and, say, okay, last time I checked, so this time I'm betting. Like you're not going to be able to do that over a course of a long period of time. So if you have an actual system, so like I've heard of people like, for example, if the biggest card in your hand is red, you're going to check or I'm going to bet. Yeah. Or if the biggest, like let's say you have aces, right? Okay, you can't really do it then, right? But then people will say, okay, the biggest card on the board, if it's red or black, I'm gonna check or bet, right? Yeah. So there's like different systems. I've seen people like on a tournament clock, they'll just glance up at the tournament clock, and if it's an even number or an odd number, they check or bet.
I like that better.
That is good.
If you do anything that involves even the color of your card, anything to do with the cards on the table, then if someone figures out what you're doing, which they probably won't, but if they do,
it could be a tough.
Like if there's like a diamond draw out there, you always do whatever on red. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Might be
absolutely no, for sure.
But yeah, I think the clock thing, that's cool.
That's a good
random number generator, anything that's not involved with the actual cards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've heard of people too, like, you know, where they'll glance down at their watch, like. But now here's how I go about it. Is if you're gonna do that, and what my recommendation is, if you're gonna go the watch route, I would just look at your watch before every hand. Yeah. Before you actually get dealt your cards.
If people are really paying attention.
If people are really paying attention. If you're worried about that, like you feel like you're on like a really good table, then before each hand, just glance down at your watch. If it's an odd number, then if you get into a situation where it's 50-50, then you fucking check your bet. Like, you know, before you get to the hand. Like, and like, that's my thing. And here's the other thing. I think the biggest thing as far as staying balanced is you can't just say, okay, well, it depends on the flop. Like, that's not balanced. Like, you need to say, like, with certain holdings, right? Mm-hmm. Like, if you have an overpair, like, you can't just say, well, it depends. If there's a straight draw, then I'm going to bet. Like, that's too obvious. Right. Like, so you have to say, I'm either 50% of the time I'm going to check no matter what the flop is, or 50% of the time I'm going to bet no matter what the flop is. Right. Now, sizing, a little bit different story. Like, then you have to have your own system as far as what sizing. We all have our own, right? What sizing you're going to use here because of X. Like, but that's kind of like what you
There's GTO to that too, like medium, small.
Yeah, like, I mean, generally speaking, on flops, GTO likes you to use a smaller sizing, generally speaking.
Oh, okay.
Then generally speaking, like on turns and rivers, well, rivers a little bit different, but generally speaking on turns, GTO likes you to use, you know, like a half pot or like basically like a half pot to like 75% pot on a turn. Generally, like, there's obviously scenarios where you don't, right? Like, for example, like maybe you check the flop and then the turn comes and you decide to bet like third pot, right? There's certain scenarios, and then the river's like a lot different because the river is a tough spot because you have to, and this is like where it becomes hard to be balanced, is you have to have a lot of different bluffing bet sizing. Like, you have to bet for value with a third pot sometimes, but you also have to bluff with a third pot sometimes. Like, you can't just bet thin value, and every time you bet thin, that's a value. Yeah. So, like, you have to have some bets. Now, my system that I used to use, and I don't use this anymore, is I used to go basically like 60% pot on the river if I'm bluffing or if I'm betting for value. Now, that is not the worst strategy because at least it's like they don't know, but it's too much of a 50-50.
If you can get more folds than you want in those situations.
You would, and it's too 50-50 because if they have a hand, it's like, well, it's kind of 50-50 whether he's bluffing or bet. Or like but if you vary your bet sizing and your bluff sizing, your value bluffs, like now it's way harder for people to actually know what you're doing.
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
Yeah. So that's kind of, you know, where that is. But kind of to go further in, like where, you know, one thing that everybody likes to hear about, what's the worst bad beat you've ever had? I'll tell you mine afterwards because it involves you, but.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I mean, I've had a lot of bad beats. Two come to mind, and they're kind of similar. What was it? There was one hand I was playing. It was in New Hampshire. Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah, it was in New Hampshire. It was I forget the card room. Chasers. If anyone on the East Coast knows, Chasers. It's a great card room. Highly recommend it. It was really fun. Made a lot of money there. One of the worst bad beats I had there was I had pocket tens, and I was in middle position, and then the guy in the small blind had been like super loose aggressive.
You had pocket tens in the small blind?
I had pocket tens in middle position.
Middle position. Okay.
And the small blind was like some loose, aggressive, sort of drunk player.
Did you raise? Were you the initial raiser?
The way it went down is this guy had been raising a bunch pre-flop and a bunch of other hands. There's like one limper gets to me. We're playing 1-2. I raised to like, I think it was like 15 or something, or maybe it was 1-3. Anyways, I raised to like 15.
Okay.
Folds to the small blind. He re-raises.
And hitting it with a 5x raise, huh?
Yeah, it's like he raises to like 41. Well, like 15.
15 isn't that crazy.
In a 1-2 or 1-3, like people do that all the time.
Yeah.
It still depends on the card room, but
You kinda
there,
have to.
yeah, there it was like that's like kind of standard. So
Gotcha.
he raised to like 41 or 48 or some like weird number like
Okay.
that. Folds back to me.
You have a strong hand.
Yeah, I have a strong hand. I think I just call. I might have 4-bet and then no, I did 4-bet. I 4-bet to like 70 something.
Okay.
And then he called or whatever the min raise.
So
was.
you did like around 80 something.
Yeah, around 80, something like that. I don't remember exactly. This was like a year ago, I think. He calls. Flop comes out. Ace King 10. I'm like, sweet. He starts. He leads into me like big for like half of the stack. I just go all in because I think I have like 200 behind or 2 something whatever.
Sure.
He calls. I flip over my set of 10s. He flips over King 8 offsuit.
Oh.
So well, it's fine because like he has he has middle pair. I have bottom set. I'm like, this can't go wrong. I'm in my head. I'm like, all right, sweet. And then turns an ace to the board pairs. I'm like, sweet. I have a full house. I say that out loud, and the guy next to me is like, that's not good for you. I'm like, what do you mean? And then the river's a king.
Oh my god.
And I'm just like, oh, that's why. And I'm fucking pissed. I had just sat down like maybe like 40 minutes.
That's
prior.
so sick.
Yeah, and I was just like, because I looked up afterwards. I think I was 98.5% to win, 1% to draw, and then like 0.5% to lose, and I lost.
That's
so
sick.
That sucked. And the other one I remember was a little bit further back. Basically, I flopped a full house against this lady who had a straight flush gut shot draw. We get all in on the flop. Cause she's like 3-4, and it's like ace 5, whatever my set was, but like 8s or something.
Okay.
And we get it all in. Turn gives me a full house. I'm like, all right, sweet. And then she rivers her gut shot straight flush.
God.
So. I mean, like that happens though, and I can't be mad because like if you get it in good, there's nothing to be mad about.
No, I mean,
like you just
in the long run, I mean, with that play,
I'd say it's plus EV.
Yeah, I mean, like in the long run, like if you play, I mean, theoretically, if you play that 99 times, you're gonna win a fuck.
Yeah, it just so happens that 1% is reality.
Yeah, I know. If only you could replay it.
Yeah, so that shit happens, and if I was mad, that would just be me being results oriented. So like I just won't be mad because I'm not going to be results oriented.
Gotcha.
So yeah.
That's crazy, man. Yeah. So I will go over I have 2, and actually the first one I'll tell you about is with this guy, and then the second one was actually about 3 weeks ago, but I'll go over these 2 real fast. So we'll fast forward to, this was my first time playing live cash game ever.
I suckered him into coming.
Yes. So to this point, I had only played tournaments, okay? Because I had it in my mind, everybody starts out playing tournaments because you got to get the big score, all that kind of thing. And then as time went on, I was like, I'm really investing a lot of time in these tournaments. Like, I want to invest less time and have more opportunity to make money, right? So that's why I was like, okay. So I started playing cash games online, and I did that for a long time, and it was really beneficial, right? It gave me all the right fundamentals, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go crush it at this cash game. So I go with this guy. He picks me up too. I had just
yeah, you were right.
I sold my truck, and actually, funny shit is I bought my car right after this. After he busted me,
I
went to the car dealership and I bought my car right after this. I was pretty steamy. So we get there, and first off, playing cash versus tournament for your first time ever playing cash live, it's nerve-wracking. It's a little different. Totally comfortable playing poker, right? I've been playing poker for quite a while, totally comfortable. But there's just something about playing live cash your first time that you're shaky, right? So I got into a couple of pots where, I got the pot basically stolen from me when I probably shouldn't have, right? So I bought in for 100 big blinds on a 1-2 game with him. So I bought in for $200, and I brought 2 more buy-ins, but the way I lost, I was like, fuck this. I was like, I could reload here 2 more times at least, but fuck this. Anyways, we'll get into it. So at this point, I have $120 in my stack. Only lost like $80, right? Because I had dragged a pot. We're about an hour in.
And this is big for you, right? Because usually the cash games you play were like 10, 20 cent?
No, I was playing like 50 cent, $1, some 1, 2 online.
Okay, never mind.
So I was playing about the same stakes online, but it's just different, right?
Yeah.
So so the stakes weren't the problem, right? It was just like, mainly it was myself. Like, I really wanted to succeed. I'm like, dude, I need to go out there. I need to go fucking triple up my money and to all the naysayers, right? Not that there's a lot of naysayers, but so we get there, and so Adam had been winning a lot of pots. Like, he was up about $300, $400 at the time.
It was a soft table.
Yeah, it was a shitty.
You're kidding.
I guess I was the fish, but so it was not a very good table. It was a lot of old people, but anyway, not against old people, but anyways, we'll get into it. So I was in the small blind, and I had 4 or 5 of hearts, a very playable hand post flop. Adam was he was like the table captain basically. He was raising a fuck ton of pots, and his raise was like either $6 or $7 for the entire day, and randomly in the cutoff or even like the hijack, he decided to raise to $10, and I was like, I think this is bullshit, and everybody folded to me in the small blind, and so he raises to 10. I make it 35 to go with 4 or 5 of hearts. Out of position, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna make this a hefty 3-bet so that he folds. So he calls. The flop comes. It comes 10, 4, 7. 10, 4, 7.
Okay.
And I bet out. I'm first. I bet out. He calls. Then, and there's 1 heart out there, mind you. No. There's 2 hearts. Sorry, 2 hearts. So I had a flush draw and a pair.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, all right, well, if this guy doesn't have a 10, like, I'm probably just going to take it down here. But if not, I have a lot of backdoor outs, right? I mean, a lot of cards that are going to make a lot of outs, right? I have a flush draw. Theoretically here, I have like 9 outs, and we're good, right? So the turn comes a 4. I had a 5. I had a 5 on the flop. The turn comes a 4 of clubs. So now I have 2 pair.
Oh. So you had 4 or 5, right?
Yes, I had 4 or 5. Now I have 2 pair. Got to keep this shit straight. So now at this point, I have like $80 behind, ish. And so I'm like, you know what? If he has a 10, he's drawing extremely thin. So I'm just going to shove. And he sits there. So I shove my $80. I have 2 pair. I know for a fact, unless he has... With a flush draw. With a flush draw, I know for a fact I have the best of this. And if not, I'm not drawing dead, right? If he has a set, I'm not drawing dead. Another 4, another 5. Well, actually, if he had a set. But regardless, I have outs. So he sits there for like a good 2-3 minutes. And he's like, I have a terrible hand, but I absolutely have to call. And so he fucking throws his stack in there. And this man flips up 10-3 offsuit, and the river comes an offsuit 6 and makes him his straight.
Let's go!
Yeah. Makes him his straight, and I'm just like, literally, dude, if this would have came a 6 of hearts, that would have been like the best thing I've ever experienced. Or literally no 6, like if he, like in the grand scheme of things, he had quite a few outs because like he could have hit a 10, he could have hit a 3, he could have hit, yeah, like he had 10-3. So my initial read that he was full of shit was correct. I was correct all the way through the hand, except on the flop, he did flop top pair, right? So then the turn comes, and I'm correct. I have the best of this, right? And I have a flush draw. My equity through the roof. I think going into the river, I think I had about 90, maybe like 88% equity, and you know, life was good. Life was good, and then he hits a straight.
So my rationale, by the way, for playing 10-3 was, one, I was like, fuck it. And then 2, I was like, oh, be heads up with Nick. All right, let's get it in.
Right.
But part of me was like, he's with 10-3 pre-flop, he's probably going to win this hand. That'll be good for him to, like, you know, get into live cash. I was trying to be a little bit nice.
Right.
But then
I think he's wrong about that. I think what his thinking was.
I knew I'd suck out, right?
Well, no, not with 10-3. It's not very connected cards, right? What my thought process was here, after the fact, I'm like, this asshole knew I was new at this table, so he was thinking, you know what? If I call this in position, I'm gonna be able to steal this from him at a later street and just bluff off my chips. That's definitely what you were thinking.
Yeah,
you were thinking I'm in position. And with the $10 raise, you were for sure just looking to steal the blinds.
Yes, that's true.
But then when I 3-bet you, you're thinking, because there's no reason to call 10-3 offsuit.
No.
You're thinking, okay, I'm going to get to play Nick in position, and if the flop comes 10-10, then I'm going to be able to bust him, or because he might have a big hand. Or if it comes absolutely nothing, I might be able to just make him uncomfortable and bet him off of his hand.
And also part of it, post-flop, was like, well, I'm already here. I guess I'll just test my luck. So, especially what ran through my head when he made that river bet or turn bet to go all in. I was like, well, if he wins, I can't be mad. He's my friend. It's his first time playing. If I win, that just sucks to suck. And then I sucked out. And so the rest is history.
God, yeah, that was a brutal beat, man. I remember it was messed up because my fiance, she picked me up. Because he was still playing.
I was like, you want to stay?
He just won $120 off of me, and on top of the like $300-400 that he was already up. So the man had like $800 in his stack on a 1-2 game.
That's why you should play 10.
So yeah. So then I'm like, well, I'm not gonna make this guy leave. He's clearly on a huge upswing. I'm just gonna. I like left and like walked around the casino for a minute, like basically just motherfucking all the way around, and then I was like, all right. So I called my fiance. She picked me up. She's like, literally, well, how are you done so fast? And I'm like, I don't even know what to tell you. This was not my fault. Like, and she's like, well, why didn't you reload? Like, I was like, honestly speaking, like under normal circumstances, I would have reloaded instantly. But after losing that way, like I don't think it would have done me any good to reload. Like I think I would have just been even more pissed off. So then now I go and lose like 3 buy-ins.
That's actually a good lesson because like, if you keep rebuying in your Steam, then you'll probably throw it away.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, I've done that.
Yeah. So then the most recent beat, I was playing a tournament, and so a little bit of strategy mishap here. Looking back at it, I could have done some things differently, but. Not really. I think the play was fine, but going into it, everybody, I'm on the button. I had like 65 big blinds deep, and we were 10 spots from the money in this online tournament. And it folds to me on the button. I make it 2.5x with 7-5 of clubs, and so very very playable, hand post flop, a hand that you should really raise from the button specifically. You're going to play in position to the smaller big blind if they call, and it plays very well post flop. If you flop something, great. If you don't, it's easy to let go. So it's a good hand to raise from late position, right? Not like that. In more of the stealing spot, like the cutoff. Cutoff's a little loose, but cutoff and button, right? So anyways, I raise. The small blind folds, the big blind the big blind 3-bets me. So I make it 2.5x. They make it like, I want to say like 6x, or maybe 6.5x basically, or 6.5 big blinds. So they made it roughly like 3.5x.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there like, okay, we're nearing the bubble. I could fold this, or like this person had about the same stack depth. So I'm like, okay, like would this guy really make this play unless he had a good hand? So then you guys are thinking at home, well, if you thought he had a good hand, like why wouldn't you just fold, right? Well, the problem is if you have that mindset with hands like 7-5, it's like why even play them? So those type of hands are literally built to bust big hands. So like if this guy has aces or something and the flop comes and I'm just able to completely decimate his stack, like we're in a position now where like if I could flop something like 7-7 or something like that, 2 pair, like that could literally end up putting me in a position where I could win the tournament. And if I don't flop anything, I just fold, Mm-hmm. So the flop comes, and the flop comes 8-6-4 with 2 clubs. And so I flopped straight. I literally flopped the joint. How can you lose, right?
Straight,
Yeah, nut straight. So no worries. Obviously, if he has clubs, like it's a little bit dangerous territory, right? No, sorry, it was 7. It was hearts. So there was 2 hearts on the board. So obviously, if he has hearts, it's dangerous territory, right? I unblock all that with having clubs. And by unblock, it just means that I don't have any of it. So it's a combination that he could have. So he could have a hand with hearts, right? So basically, I check. He bets, right? No, he checks. Sorry, he checks it to me. I bet quarter pot. He raises me. Then I re-raise him, and he shoves. When he shoves, he has pocket 6s, so he flops a set, I flop a straight. And we basically get all our money in. He slightly covered me. And essentially what happened from there is an ace of hearts came, so no worries there. He didn't have a heart in his hand, actually. And the river comes a 4 of spades. So he ended up rivering a full house to bust my straight. So now, you could sit here and tell me, well, you know, Nick, you didn't have to lose that money. You could have folded to 3 bet.
You got it in good, though.
Yeah, I got it in good. Like, theoretically, like, I mean, he had outs, right? I mean, if an 8-6 or if an 8-6 or 4 comes, he's gonna win the hand, right? So he had outs. I mean, if you really think about it, theoretically, he had 3-6
or an ace on the river.
Or an ace on the river, right? So he had a lot of outs. Like, I think when you really count it, I think he had like around 12 outs or so, something like that.
Sure.
So he had the 8, so 3 8s, 1 6, right?
So 10.
Then 3, yeah, he had 10 outs. So, I mean, you know, 10 times 4, I mean, theoretically, he has probably about 35% equity to hit his full house. So, I mean, to beat me. So, I mean, 35% equity.
10 times 2, because on the river.
Yeah, but, well, from the time that we got all our money in, I think he had about 35% to beat me.
Sure.
Basically, which is good equity. I mean, realistically, like, that isn't the worst spot to be in, right?
Yeah.
But, yeah, so that was the...
I
think that was one of my least favorite beats, that's for damn sure.
All my beats were least favorite beats.
Yeah. Another little situation from that tournament I'll go into, which is kind of a weird spot, is I actually was chip leader before that hand. I had about 100 big blinds in my stack. I had a lot of hands that I didn't play for a long time, and what ended up happening is I got ace-8 suited on the button, and the cutoff right before me raises. And so I was like, okay, like I want to play this a little incognito. I don't really want to 3-bet here because I am going to be in position, and like I want to disguise my hand a little bit. A suited ace from a cutoff raise is like gold. So I decided to flat the button raise, or flat the cutoff raise on the button, and the small blind called and the big blind folded, and the flop came ace high, so I flopped top pair. The small blind checked, the big blind checked, the small blind checked, the cutoff checked, and I bet like quarter pot. The small blind calls, and the initial raiser folds. Then the turn comes like a queen, and the small blind leads for like 3/4 pot. I'm like, okay, this is a little weird and it's very fishy, because that would be a play that he would make if he had an ace, right? But he really shouldn't have any better aces than mine coming from the small blind, right? In theory, he's not supposed to have a better ace than me. But the worry is, like, he could have aces up, right? He could have flopped like 2 pair with an ace, and then in that case, like, I'm in deep shit, right? So then I call, of course, I can't fold. And then the river comes, and it's like a deuce. It's like a total blank. And he bets like 3/4 pot again on the river. And it was just like one of those scenarios where like everything bricked, all the draws bricked, all the flush draws bricked, everything bricked. So it's like, I mean, realistically, like, this feels like he might have like pocket jacks or something. But even then, like, I kind of ruled out pocket jacks. It felt very weird. So I called. And he had ace jack suited in the small blind. And so, like, looking back at that, that got me to a point where I was lower in chips, and then I get it in with 7-5 and bust out. But it was kind of an interesting situation, because it was like one of those hands where, and you've probably had these, where the play made absolutely no sense. like in theory, you should never flat the small blind in that situation with a cutoff raise and a button call. Like you should theoretically either 3-bet or you should just flat out fold. Like you should never call there.
Right, but not everyone's playing according to theory, obviously.
Right. Yeah.
So, but one of the best pieces of advice I heard from I think it was Alex Torelli, was in one of his YouTube videos, was only play like one level above your opponents. Because if you're playing at like a high GTO level, at like a 1-2 game in like the middle of nowhere where no one really knows actual theory, like you'll be making plays according to theory, but they'll turn over like random shit like that. That just gets ahead. Right. So like make sure you know who you're playing against and just play like right above them, so you always have that edge. But if you play too far ahead, like you're gonna be making decisions based on things that just aren't happening.
Exactly, and that's good advice. And Alex Torelli, if you guys don't know who he is, I recommend checking out his. I think it's called something Conscious Poker or something is his channel. Alex Torelli's Conscious Poker.
You'll find him if you look him up.
One thing that you hear me talk about, and actually I'll put the link to one of his videos in the description. He has a video where he talks about, because like one of the biggest things as far as GTO, and it's honestly, there's like two, in my opinion, the two biggest things to playing GTO is one, ranges, like being able to put opponents on ranges as well as your own range, and then two is balance. And those are the two biggest things. And he in his channel, and we've talked about this, he describes putting your opponent on a range and literally the simplest. It's like a funnel, like a funnel. That's exactly what he said. Like you have a funnel and it starts and it gets narrower and narrower as the hand goes. So you put them on a wider range pre-flop. Then the flop comes, and now like how they act, it gets smaller, and then the turn, and then the river, and then now it's like by the river, you should be able to put them on a very tight range on what they could have, to where you're not going to be absolutely blindsided. And this is truthfully, like there should be very few instances, if you're playing correctly, where you should ever be like, oh my god, I can't believe that he had that. Like
I did. And with more experience, you kind of get that. And the thing that was important to the whole funnel idea was once you eliminate a hand or a combo from their range, you never put it back in. Because like on the flop, if you eliminate like pocket jacks and up, and then on the turn there like a king comes, you're not you shouldn't be worried that they now have like ace king or a set of kings because you eliminate that on the flop. Right. But that's a common mistake people make, is they eliminate something and then they're like, well, actually maybe he does have that. Right. But no, if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. Right. And that'll hopefully get you to be a better poker player.
And that's like the elimination process, because like if you think, okay, on the flop, like there's no way he has aces, then you can't get to the river and then be like, I think he has aces, like, because if you do that, then your mind is just going to play games with you and you're going to end up making bad decisions. Like you like what you said, the way Adam described it was perfect, is that you basically like you have to be able to eliminate and then just like basically erase that shit from your mind and then just continue to do that as the hand goes on.
And I've noticed even in the lower stakes, I've noticed that if you're doing that, you're eliminating these combos from what they could have. And when it gets to the river, if they're representing only a range that you already eliminated and you feel pretty sure about that, like it doesn't make any sense. They're probably bluffing. And then when I would call them down, I would call some guys with like literally with like ace jack, ace 10 high, because like I just know that they don't have any what's out there, and I'd win because their bluffs don't make any sense.
I've done the same exact thing. I've actually, as crazy as it sounds, and a lot of guys like old school think that this is insane, but I've actually had moments, whether it's in tournaments or cash games, where I've actually value bet ace high, like because like I've actually thin value bet ace high because I'm like, you know what, like I think that this is the best hand. And then of course, like with ace high, if you're value betting ace high, they most of the time just fold. But like I've actually value bet ace high because I'm so sure that I literally have the best hand here because of the actual elimination process.
But okay, so if you're value betting with ace high though, aren't they only going to call you with better? Like why would they ever call if they don't beat that?
So there's certain times where like they would call you down, like they would actually call you with worse, like like specifically like, and this is if you're balanced, because if you're bluffing with smaller bet sizing, then theoretically like if there's draws that have bricked and they have king high, like say like a draw like 4-5 or 9-8 suited, stuff like that, like theoretically they may call you with like a queen high or a king high if they feel like with what your combos are here that it's good. Theoretically. That's just, and that's like more deep level, but there are times like I've actually done it before. I've actually physically called somebody. I have successfully called somebody with queen 10 high and won before, because I literally specifically said in my mind, they have 4-5 suited here because that's the only thing that makes sense, and I fucking dragged the pot, and they tried bluffing there with like a light value bet, like a light bet to like make it look milky, and they literally were dumbfounded that I called. It was insane.
That's awesome. That's such a baller move.
Oh yeah, dude.
I feel like, this
my
is
table image from that point on was like, don't mess with this guy.
This guy's a fucking pro.
Yeah,
if you're winning pots by calling down queen high,
it's nuts.
I don't want to fuck with you at all. Like really at all.
Literally.
You're reading my mind.
But, so you know, at this point, you know, we've talked a lot of shop about poker. You know, definitely got some good info, had a lot of good conversation here. Now we have the table set up behind us, so what we're gonna get started here pretty soon is we're actually having a heads up challenge. Won't go into too much detail because we'll go into a separate video on that. But yeah, so we're gonna be playing a little bit of a prolonged challenge here, starting today. So we're gonna start filming here. We're gonna film all the hole cards, all the hands, try to make it a little bit of a production there, while keeping our level of play at the highest level that we can. So just kind of wanted to have an interesting conversation here for people that are new to poker, or even people that aren't new that just want to hear us talk and BS about poker. And then now you kind of get to watch us go at it. So I appreciate everybody watching, and you know, it's been fun having Adam on here.
Yeah,
and, thanks for hanging out with me for today. And yeah, we'll catch you guys later. Thank you.